To another short educational video on financial astrology courtesy of investingsuccess.ca. Today is the 16th of November 2024. In a couple previous videos I talked about time, and I talked about W.D. Gann and how he did not tell time using a wristwatch or by looking at the calendar on his office wall. He told time by the motion of the planets, and in particular the heliocentric motion of the planets as they orbited around the sun. Now, he had many different timing theories, mechanisms, and there is one in particular that I want to talk to you about in this video today. What W.D. Gann said was, if you can identify a significant market top, make a note at that significant top of what the heliocentric degree separation was between Saturn and Uranus. And then determine when these two planets have moved further apart in 30-degree increments. So what you're going to see in the following charts is an example where I have identified a significant top. And at that top, it just so happens that Saturn and Uranus were separated by 101 degrees. So then I'm going to ask the question, what did the markets do when the planets had moved farther apart to where they were 131 degrees apart, 161, 191, 221, 251, 281 degrees, and so on. Let's just have a look and see, and I think you'll realize that Mr. Gann was onto something. So the significant top I'm going to pick is back in early 2000, and let's just call it the top of the NASDAQ tech bubble, which really affected all equity markets. So I'm going to use this chart of the S&P 500 because it too experienced a top and a significant sell-off. So as I said, at that point in time, Saturn and Uranus were 101 degrees apart. So then I posed the question, when are they 131 degrees apart? And the answer, as you can see on this chart, comes in April of 2004. Now, what were the markets doing in 2004? Well, you can see by this dashed line that they were consolidating, moving downwards a little bit after having had a significant rally off of the post-market blow-off lows. Now, this actual 131 degree increment here, it very, very closely aligns to the beginning then of this period of consolidation. Now, the next question I'm going to ask is, when were Saturn and Uranus separated by 161 degrees? That is, when did they move a further 30 degrees away from each other? Well, as you can see in this chart, it was 2007. And you can see that they reached this degree of separation very, very closely in conjunction with the market top in 07, the beginning then of the subprime mortgage crisis, or as the media likes to call it these days, the great financial crisis. When then did these two planets move a further 30 degrees apart? That is, when were they separated by 191 degrees? Well, as you can see by this chart, this degree separation came very, very close to an interim peak, at which point in 2011 the markets had a drawdown, and I think if I do my math, it was about a 7% drawdown on the S&P 500. So again, I think we can see that Saturn and Uranus are acting very much like a timepiece. And I think we can see that Mr. Gann definitely was onto something if he was using these two particular planets. Now, the next question I'm going to pose is, when were they a further 30 degrees apart? That is, when were they separated by 221 degrees? Well, you can see that that came very close to another interim top, where the markets experienced a bit of a rough patch and a subsequent double bottom. Now, this came in late 2014. So again, Mr. Gann seems to be onto something with his Saturn and Uranus timing mechanism. And continuing on with our line of questioning, when did they move yet another 30 degrees apart? That is, when were they separated by 251 degrees? Well, the answer to that question comes in late 2018. And here we go. And if I remember rightly, this had something to do with the overnight repo market and the Federal Reserve. And there was some issues that the repo market was not functioning properly, and the markets went into a bit of a panic. But if you consider that we started this investigation at the market high of 2000, here we are 18 years later, and we still see that Saturn and Uranus are acting very much like a timepiece. Now, I should point out, and if you're looking at the right hand side of this chart, you're probably saying, yeah, but they didn't align to the COVID panic sell-off. So here's the deal with Mr. Gann and his pairs of planets and his other timing mechanisms. You have to look at a wide array of these planetary pairs and these various timing mechanisms. There is no one single planetary pair. There is no one single planet that is going to catch every significant swing, V bottom, interim top. So you have to look at you have to do a lot of homework, in other words. But ultimately, all of them will, in some way, shape, or form, align. And they don't necessarily always align to these pairs of planets. Don't forget, you've got Venus retrograde events, you've got Mercury retrograde, you've got perihelion, aphelion. There's a whole array of astrological tools that one has to really pay attention to. And this brings us then to the next question. When were they yet a further 30 degrees apart? That is to say, when were they separated by 281 degrees? Well, as you can see on this chart here, that came very, very close to what we refer to now as the October 2022 lows. And as we know, October 2022 was the end of a Hebrew Shemitah year. And yes, this 2022 bottom was very significant. But you can see here that Saturn and Uranus also pretty much had it pegged. And so then the question is, when are we going to see the next interval? The answer is sometime in September, October of 2026. Now, what have I been telling you repeatedly? What have I been telling you in my financial astrology almanacs? We're getting very long in the tooth in this McWhorter 18.6-year cycle, and we are headed for another bottom of that 18.6-year cycle. And I do believe it is going to look very much like what we saw in 2008 in the great financial crisis, the subprime mortgage crisis. We're headed for another one of these. It's probably not going to be mortgage related this time. It'll be something else. But I do think the markets are going to go through a tremendous period of upheaval again. And that will, of course, demand that the government bail out the system yet again. So September 2026, Saturn and Uranus are already giving us a heads up that, hey guys, there's something coming here. And that then is reinforced by the McWhorter 18.6-year cycle and the North Node moving through the sign of Aquarius. And so I think what we can conclude then in terms of timing, Mr. Gann was very prudent in putting away the wristwatch and putting away the calendar. He watched the planets, in particular their heliocentric motion, and I've just shown you how looking at the separation between heliocentric Saturn and Uranus acts as a very, very good timing mechanism. And I'm going to leave you with one other observation, if I could. On this particular chart of the S&P 500, you'll notice I have a dark blue line sketched in here at the March 2009 significant low after the great financial crisis. And one of the things that W.D. Gann also watched for was 180-degree heliocentric movements of the planet Saturn. And so the question then is, from the 2009 lows, when can we see, or when can we expect Saturn to have moved 180 heliocentric degrees? Because Mr. Gann said, identify a significant low, tell me when Saturn has moved 180 degrees, and I will show you a top in the equity market. Well, let's see if he made sense. Here's our low, 2009. Go over to the far right of the chart, you'll see this gold, heavy set, dashed vertical line. That denotes Saturn having moved 180 heliocentric degrees, and look where it is, right here, right now, right at the peak of these overvalued markets at S&P 6000. And we know in the past week or so, we have seen the markets pull back decidedly. The media would like you to believe that it's all about Donald Trump and Trump 2.0 and the people he's appointing to the cabinet and so on and so on. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think our emotions are perturbed, disturbed, influenced by the movement of the planets. And I think Saturn, having moved 180 degrees from a market low, a previous period where our emotions were rattled and disturbed, I think Saturn moving that number of degrees leads us to another episode of human emotion being disturbed and rattled. Even if Donald Trump was appointing some very sensible people to cabinet, I still think the markets would be having the jitters here right now, and human emotion would be affected. We are very much driven by what happens in the cosmos, and those emotions then influence the financial markets. And that brings me to the end of this little video. So as always, you can find me at investingsuccess.ca. I publish the astrology letter. I do some stuff on Substack. I have some courses on Udemy. So please embrace astrology, embrace the techniques and the tools of W.D. Gann and other people from the 20s, 30s, 40s. These guys knew what they were doing, and the markets very much are just a reflection of human emotion, and our emotion is influenced by events in the cosmos. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you very kindly for having watched this short little video. Take care.